Hello, I'm Abby from the Open University Psychological Society. Every year, OUPS holds a psychology conference where we invite top psychologists to present up-to-date research on a specific area. The annual conference for 2014 will be on the 4th to the 6th of July at Warwick University. The topic this time will be the new neurosciences, friend or foe. The conference is designed to stimulate discussion on the social relevance of this rapidly developing science. To tell us a bit more about it, I'm delighted to introduce Professor Frederick Totes. His most recent book is Biological Psychology, which forms a popular and recommended textbook in universities throughout the world. Fred has over 33 years' experience of teaching and tutoring. He's taught undergraduate classes not only in the UK, but also in Moldova, Romania, France, Germany, Denmark, Sweden and the USA. Fred is also Vice President of OUPS and a regular at all our events. Thanks for agreeing to talk to me today, Fred. Can I start by asking you, what is neuroscience?
Neuroscience is essentially what we used to call biological psychology, though it brings in a wider range of different people who study it. So it's a study of how the brain produces mind and behaviour, and includes biological psychology, essentially.
Okay. And how do you feel it's advancing psychology?
I think it is advancing psychology. I think when we know what bits of the brain do, then we get a much better understanding of psychology. However, I would have some cautions in this approach, and these are the kind of things that we want to bring out in this conference.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit more about neuroimaging? That's the way you find out, isn't it, what bits of the brain?
You find out what the structure of the brain is, and you find out what different bits of the brain do. So you set a task for someone and you see which bits of the brain are active under those conditions. And then you try to link activity in the brain, bits of the brain, to particular mental states and behaviours.
And how does that happen? How can they do that? I'm sure you need more than one study.
Oh, you need plenty of studies, and it is controversial, but with caution, we're now in a position to allocate responsibility to some bits of the brain for bits of behaviour.
Ask you who is coming to the conference. Who will we have the pleasure of listening to?
We have a number of star speakers. Amongst them is Adrian Raine, who's from the University of Pennsylvania, and he's the chap who's done this research looking at criminals, murderers amongst others, looking at patterns of brain activity, in which he finds serious deviations in the brain of such people as compared to controls. And this immediately raises a whole host of controversial issues, like, is it a mitigating circumstance if you've committed a murder, if you can show that the person's brain is not functioning normally? That's just one of the issues which we'll be discussing. If you can intercept someone before they commit a crime on the basis of what their brain is doing, should you be specifically aware of certain people because of the kind of brain they have? I mean, the implications of this are enormous, and they're going to come out at this conference.
It sounds like it has implications for free will.
It very much has implications for free will, because the more and more you understand about how brains work, using principles of mechanistic science to do it, where on earth does it leave free will? Are we just machines? That will be another theme of the conference.
Okay. All right. But what about the environment, Fred? Is it all about the brain?
It's not all about the brain, because clearly the environment is important, and it's important in several ways. It's important that whatever happens is going to be a dynamic interaction between the brain and the environment. I mean, that much most of us would agree upon. But there's a more subtle reason why the environment is important, because if you look at the brains, the developing brain of a child, it's very susceptible to influences from the environment. And I suspect that murderers and other serious criminals have this kind of brain because, to a considerable extent, what was done to them in terms of their early upbringing, abuse and most unfortunate circumstances.
It has serious implications for the developing brain.
It's very serious. We know the human brain is very plastic, so to speak, very flexible, And the default option, if you like, is not necessarily a good one. The default option could be a bad one, and it's maybe only because of good upbringing that you don't go off the rails and become a criminal. These are the kind of issues we'll be discussing.
That sounds fascinating. Can you tell me who are the other speakers that are coming along?
Well, we have Gina Rippon from Aston University, who will be doing a critique of the whole neuroimaging enterprise.
Okay.
We have Raymond Tallis, who's a prominent figure in debates about to the extent to which you can generalize from other species to humans. We have Ian McGilchrist, who's published an influential book recently on hemispheric differences in the brain. We have speakers who are going to look at a kind of psychic dimension, if you like, to all this, a paranormal dimension. These are Simon Thorpe, who's coming from France, and David Lorimer, who has written a book on near-death experiences. And then we have Lance Workman talking about evolutionary psychology, and we have Morten Kringelbach from Oxford University, who will be talking about hedonism in the brain, and what the brain tells us about pleasure, and maybe what we should do about our pleasures with regard to the brain.
So we've got a great lineup of speakers planned. So Fred, you don't have to be a neuroscientist or a psychologist to come along to the conference and get something out of it.
No, you don't have to be a neuroscientist or a psychologist, and you certainly don't need to be a specialist in neuroscience. The speakers will be briefed that they need to address things to a very general audience and not use a load of terminology and jargon in doing so. I'm happy they would do that.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Oh, thanks ever so much for your time, Fred. Okay, if you want any more information, please go to our website. It's www.oops.org.uk, and I really hope to see some of you there.